there's $18,000 of free money. You could literally take a trip around the country and you can make $18,000.
Money talks, let's keep it real.
Money talks. We're back. Max is back. You came on episode 1, the first ever Money Talks, and I didn't introduce you properly. And we talked about some of your stories, but so I want to say, so Max is a lifelong entrepreneur, founder of Megaphone Agency. That's your biggest business. 20 million a year in revenue, 150 employees from Australia, from Melbourne. And you've done a million other little businesses, medium businesses, larger businesses. You also started Sylvie bed sheets made with silver.
Yep.
That was a super successful e-com brand. What else recently? Story Times.
Yes,
we talked about that a little on pod 1.
The personal brand agency is still in private. It's actually in stealth mode.
Stealth mode personal brand agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that'll be launched in a few months.
Yeah. So like, I think Max is going to be a recurring guest on Money Talks, because this is like the ethos of the podcast, talking about businesses, like breaking things down, how people make money, how people can make money. And Max is the perfect guy to chat on this with. So he'll be back a lot. So yeah, we didn't finish last time. We had some good ideas, good talks, but like, I want to keep going. So let's just start with like, I've been thinking about a few things recently. What are the easiest ways to make money right now, 2023? I'm going to start with one thing. So I've been thinking about this recently, the rental business. Very simple. Just buying things and renting them, but not Airbnbs, not cars on Turo, things like DJ equipment, snow cleaning equipment, fancy clothes. So expensive things that people use very infrequently. And for example, I think like a DJ controller, that's about $3,000. And you could probably get $300 per event, right? So 10 events, you paid back your whole thing. Good business, right?
How do you find your customers?
Facebook ads. I mean, not Facebook ads.
Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace.
Nice.
Craigslist. Probably just like your personal Instagram, that kind of thing. Like, I'm thinking like, we're talking starter businesses, like easy ways for people to make a few $1,000s a month or a year.
Yeah.
Renting stuff. What do you think?
I like it. There's a website that I found the other day. I was looking to rent it's like a boosted skateboard. It's called a One Wheel. You know One Wheel?
Yep,
Yeah.
I know One Wheel.
And there's like a website to rent extreme sports equipment.
Okay.
And so you could just look what is like the optimal listings. I don't think anyone there is probably thinking about it as a business. But let's say, for example, everyone wants boosted boards. Then you could just go, like the One Wheel was renting at something like, I don't know, $120 a day or $100 a day. And they're only like $1,500. You could buy a used One Wheel for let's say $1,000 or $900. And then you undercut the highest rated listing. And then you just recoup all of the money, and then you can either flip it or make the money as well.
Yeah.
So if you wanted it as just like a side hustle type of thing, with some quick cash, it'd be like an easy way to make some money.
Yeah. And for people that are like, well, why would someone not just buy it rather than that? Well, they might only need it once, right? They might only they might be staying in a city for a month and be like, I want to, rent something to get around the city for the month or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't want to buy it. They'd rather, even though it's bad value to rent it, it makes sense for them, right? And then like, so these are like mini assets that I think are overlooked by a lot of people, right?
If you buy it secondhand on Marketplace, then the worst case scenario is you sell it for what you bought it for. If you negotiate a good price, you might even be able to flip it for a profit.
True.
And worst case scenario, you sell it for what you bought it for. It's a bit of a hassle, but if it does work, so that way you could just buy a bunch of things, see what actually gets listed and what works, or even just list items that you don't even have, see if there's demand for it. And if there is, then just go on Marketplace, buy it once you've already got demand, and then try to get some income going in. Eventually get like a personal assistant to like manage all of the listings and start making a few $1,000s a month.
That's the Max Hertan special. No risk.
Yeah.
You just advertise it before you even have it. You see the demand. You start saying, great. Yeah. You guys want to rent this out? Perfect. You go buy it. You finalize the deal after it's already rented. money's coming back to you already.
That's actually an interesting idea where you go on Craigslist and then you list items for rent and you just come up with 50 different items that are all somewhere under $3,000. And then you see what has the highest demand. Anything that has demand, you say, sorry, it's already busy. It's already like being rented.
Yep.
And so you just, let's say you spend a few $100s on like advertising these items. And then you figure out what are the things that are of the highest demand that can get the highest rate. And then you go buy them on Marketplace for the cheapest price possible with no risk, because that way you can sell them for the same price that you bought it for. And then maybe you can build a few $1,000s a month rental business.
I like it.
There you go.
Yeah, like another thing, like things like ladders. Like you move, you need to use a ladder, right? It's like, I don't want to buy a ladder. I don't want to own a ladder. I don't want to store a ladder. You have a ladder in your garage that you paid, I don't know how much ladders are, but a few $100. You bought a used one. I'd pay $50 to use a ladder, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I think these things are kind of scalable too. If you buy a nut, like let's say the DJ controller example, I start with one DJ controller. It's $2,500 or $3,000. I rent it out 10 times. I made my money back. You know, now I take that, I buy a second DJ controller. Now I have two. And then it's just like, how are you, you start really local and then you start like generating leads a little further away.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I have like 8 DJ controllers and I'm renting like all of them twice a week. And what's the math on that? Like that's like $4,800 a week.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. One business that I have looked at a little bit for different reasons is RV rentals. Because there's like 3 or 4 websites that are specialized for RV rentals. And, if you go to Burning Man, to rent an RV is incredibly expensive. It's like $8,000, like minimum 1 week. They won't let you do like 2 nights or 3 nights. So it's like $8,000 and everything gets booked out from like Los Angeles to Reno to Utah to San Francisco. Basically everything gets booked out. So you book a year in advance, $8,000 to have an RV for 1 week. And the total cost of the RV might be like $80,000 or $100,000. So you're literally spending like 10% of the value of the RV, to the point where it's almost worth buying an RV secondhand, and the depreciation of owning the RV will be less. And then I was thinking, well, then you could just rent it out on like RV Easy. And so potentially you could make $20,000 a year, like renting it. If you just found someone to do it, you say, hey, you take 50% of the profit, they rent it out. That covers like, the depreciation or whatever. And then you leverage it for when you need to use it. But potentially you could go to like a dealership that sells RVs and say, hey, like, can I, when you're selling these as an upsell, say, hey, we've got someone that can list it and try to get you additional income. So that way there's like an RV shop in LA. You say, hey, as a bonus when you're selling them, tell them like, give them my card and say, I'll help them make income from it. And that way for the people that want to make income when they list it, then this person comes in, lists it, does all the work, manages the pickup, the clean, whatever. That could be a way to build a little side income as well.
Yeah, that's dope. And what's sick, like we're talking about things like you're saying, the 2 examples we gave, it's like 10 rentals and you've made back your whole asset, right? Like compare that to like buying a house to Airbnb, which is the most popular rental income thing people talk about. Like you're not making anywhere close to the house back with 10 rentals, right? It's like, you're not even 10 years, right? So like we're talking about things that are like low upfront investment, which is what most people want when they're starting to try and make money. And then like really high, call it yield or, ROI on your asset.
I mean, if you're just getting started and it's like, it's day one and you're trying to find a way to get the ball rolling, then these are ways we can do it. Kind of fun way to learn the ways of business, get things going.
Yeah. Another one, back to our money-making starter kit. So do you know how sportsbook bonuses work?
Loosely, yeah.
So like sports betting is becoming legalized in the US state by state right now. I'm not an expert on it, but I follow a lot of people on Twitter online that talk about it. So sportsbooks want you to join. This has been like a super long thing where they give you bonuses. So if you deposit $100, they'll match that. They have different things like some will give you 100% up to $100, up to $500. I think 500 is usually. Sometimes it's 1,000. Sometimes you have to play through it a certain amount of times before you can withdraw, and that's to stop people from like depositing 1,000, getting the extra 1,000 and withdrawing it. But now all these sports books are trying to acquire people rapidly because it's a race to the top. Who's going to be the biggest? Who's going to get all the users? And there's literally like bonuses state by state. And I saw somewhere the other day, if you just took a trip through the United States and hit every state, because everything is by geographic location, like Colorado might have some sportsbook bonus that just went live in Colorado. They're trying to acquire new users there because it's legalized. California is not legalized yet. So like once that's legal, then everyone's going to rush here, try and get all the users. But I think as of the other day when I saw this stat, it was like there's $18,000 of free money. So you could literally take a trip around the country. Probably you can make $18,000, call it in a month. And then you get a free trip around the whole country through every state. You could probably hit sports games in every state and still come out on top.
I like it. Wait, so how does it work? So I go to Arkansas, or I don't know, just name some random state as if I know the geography of it.
We give him a break. He's Australian.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not American either. So like,
yeah. And then how does it work? So it's like you put in your 500, you get a 500 bonus, and then you have to bet it on something like really low risk to try to get the return back, or?
Yeah. So like there's, again, I'm not like doing this. So I'm not like, I don't know exactly, but you can at the very least like bet on both sides to play through it. And
Gotcha.
you're
And
maybe
then you
losing
take
10% on the bonus, but you're able to withdraw like, instead of 100% of what you put in, maybe it's 80% or something
Gotcha.
like that.
So you can make like $500 per state or per city or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some different ones. Yeah. And then there's different sites too. So there might be like 6 different bonuses you could hit in a state. And I just think like things like that are just super interesting because a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to do that. But it's like, why not? Like if like people say they don't want to do stuff like that, but then they also complain about like not having any money, not being able to make any extra income besides their job, not being able to quit their job. And so those things kind of just fascinate me because it's like, that's right in front of you. Anyone could do that,
I like it. I've got an idea for you actually. Put together either a software or a document where it has like 1,000 money making ideas. And then there's like a questionnaire that you fill out. So it's like, do you want to take any risk? Are you just getting started out, or do you already have experience? Do you want this to compound over time, or do you want to just like extract as much money as possible? Like, are you willing to travel? Or, so you fill out this like 9-step questionnaire, and then it's like, here are like 14 money making strategies that fit your thing. And then like, this could be there. And so that way for people that, let's say they've just sold their business and they want to know what to do, or they're just starting out, it could be like a fun way as you come up with a million ideas on this podcast, you put them all in this, either a software or whatever it is.
That's cool.
That could be a fun way to like help people find their next money making way.
I like that. Yeah, because I think it's cool. And there's like stuff at every kind of point in life and stuff that speaks to people more than others. Like that sports betting thing. If you're a sports fan, it's obviously much more accessible, much more interesting to you because it's like,
If you like to travel, if you like sports.
to travel. Yeah. And then around sports betting, I think super interesting. There's like there's other things going on where obviously there's people selling picks and that kind of thing. I don't really know, like, I understand how the people selling picks make money. I think people buying picks are not necessarily making money. So that whole thing I'm not sure about. But what I find really interesting is there's people who talk about like positive EV bets that you can make. EV is like expected value. Yeah. Okay. And so it's like, of course there's no guarantee of who's going to win a game or whatever, but there's people who kind of scour the internet, look at odds across different sports books and say like, hey, this one is priced too low. And so whether or not that game wins or loses, it's very good value. And there's like people who just game these things, basically no risk. And just over time, they might make $5,000 one day, lose $4,000 the next, make $3,000 the next, but over time they're actually profitable. And it's not betting on sports the way that you're like, hey, I like the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they're going to win. It's like a very calculated mathematical way,
Yeah. I mean, I've got two stories around making money from gambling. One is, did you play poker back in the day or not as much?
I should have. I didn't.
Yeah. You got to come to one of these poker games.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was in university, it was like, I'd go to class and I'd read a book about playing poker, and then I just would like study playing poker. but it's exactly that. It's, in any given hand, no one has any necessarily significant edge. But over 1,000 hands, if you play your expected value and you have like a marginal edge over a period of time, then you start to make money. And, still today you can grind out money playing poker. You can play like, 50 cent $1 or like $1, $2 where you put on $100, $200. The games are a lot more solved now, but you could just study the game, understand the basics. You can kind of research players, make sure that they're not good players, and just sit and then play the kind of hands, in the right way. You can play live games. You can play live games. And I've got a friend who, tries to find these games where it's kind of, a bunch of businessmen or a bunch of people that like don't really know what they're doing as well. And if you have the basics down pat, you can start to make really good money. And then I got my friend who's a horse gambler, and he got asked to leave school when he was like 15 or 16 because he wasn't good at school. He was a little dyslexic. He was he needed to make money because he felt like he was a failure. He got kicked out of school.
Yeah.
And so like kind of the odds are against him. And he was on like these horse betting forums and like learning about like how to make it happen. And now he's made millions of dollars. And similar thing, like at one point he was looking for arbitrage opportunities and he's doing in-game betting. Now he's looking for edges. And if he finds a horse that he feels like is like a good weighting, he'll just put a lot of money on it. It doesn't matter if it wins or loses. If he feels like it was a plus EV bet, he'll just keep doing it. And he barely has ever had a losing week, like doing this for like 10 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those things because it's like people just discount these things all the time. They're like, no, like, you can't make money like that. And then it's like when you just have examples of like your friend and he's made money for a long period of time. And again, he's not guessing, he's not betting as a customer of betting sites or whatever. He's literally like mathematically analyzing this and like being unemotional.
Totally.
He might have a huge losing day, but it doesn't matter because he's staying the course.
Yeah. I still think though with these things that the problem with them is the volume of transferable skills and the compounding nature of the asset you're building.
Yeah.
So like I do think that they're really good to get you started, but they also are a trap the longer you stay in them because if you want to make your first 100K, amazing, But once you've got that, then you want to kind of move into something that the skills compound and the asset compounds as well, which becomes sellable. It can run without you, whatever it is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that is a perfect segue to the next topic.
Yeah.
The worst businesses.
Yeah.
And terrible businesses to be in. Mine is going to be restaurants that I thought of. Why are restaurants so bad? Everyone talks about how bad restaurants are. I want to like talk about it a little because people just say that. And it's like, why? So I had a cookie company. So, I did the food thing, not exactly the same. So first off, I think restaurants are bad because you have huge overhead, limited profit margin, and very limited upside. So it's like just to rent a building to put a restaurant in, let's call it, just making up numbers, but let's say it's $20,000 a month. So now you have staff, electricity, all these costs that add up that are literally just like whether you sell one meal or whether you sell out every night or you sell nothing, these are costing you money every day. So like that's the first thing. And then the restaurant business, like the typical profit margin is like, so the cost, it's like 30% cost. So right off the bat, like, and then you have staff and then you have electricity and then you have the renting the place and all this stuff. So it's like the profit margin might end up being 10 or 15%. And that's if it's good. That's if you run it properly, it's 10 or 15%. And now when you talk about like tech companies, agencies, these kind of businesses, they're kind of infinitely scalable. You can hire more people, you can grow your users, you can jack up your marketing. But a restaurant has 52 seats or 74 seats. And it's literally just like there is a maximum amount of revenue that you could extract from in a year, right? So now you're talking about like capped upside where like if everything goes perfect, you're doing 2.1 million a year, so your range is, let's say 1.6 to 2.1 and it's at 10 to 15%. And that's like if everything goes perfect. And then you have all this downside, something like COVID happens, you're like losing tons of money, bad weather, your manager gets sick, your supplier gives you bad vegetables and someone complains. Like there's just so many things that could go wrong and very few things that can go right. So
Yeah.
that's, I think, my breakdown of why like a restaurant is a bad business. It was similar with being in the cookie business. Like I did the wholesale thing because I was like, I don't want to do retail because of that reason. So I was like, at least if I do wholesale, and again, this was me starting at 20 years old, like funding the whole thing myself with no money. So I wasn't like, I was just thinking of like, what can I actually afford? And I'm like, well, I can't afford to like rent a store and see how it goes, you know? So at least this, I can like get a manufacturer, make the product, sell it, make sure I have some kind of margin in there, but have no overhead or anything. And I just did everything myself. Like I had no salespeople or no marketing people or anything. But even then it was tough because like the profit margins are just small and there's just like, you know, it's tough to, it's the cap upside and the small margins. I don't know.
Food is super rough.
Yeah.
And, yeah, with the restaurant, I've had 3 friends that I've spoken to that have restaurants, and one of them sold his SEO company for like $4 or $5 million. Really good entrepreneur, really good internet marketer. And it was funny talking to him about the business. He was saying, firstly, it's like incredibly time consuming. It's really hard to consistently staff because the people that often work at restaurants don't see it as a long-term career. So there's constantly coming out and then you have to continually train people. People don't rock up for shifts and then you have to like come to the restaurant last minute. There's the cost of food and like food management. So a couple of things happen where like sweet potatoes will like 3x in cost because like some crop issue will happen. And then like the margins of your meals don't make sense and you have to like change the menu. And then if you've over ordered or if people don't come in for 1 week, then you have all these like costs that just get destroyed because the food doesn't actually get used. But he was talking about like split testing the menu to try to figure out what would increase average order value. And he was changing like the positioning and he was looking at the margin of every meal. But this is like a really technical entrepreneur. And he was saying that with all of that, he still was saying like he would never recommend it for anyone. And yet still all of the warning stories that you hear about restaurants, there's still part of me that wants to own a restaurant at some point.
This is the podcast where we say what to do and do the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're like, don't do this, don't do this. They're like, we should do that rental business, man. We should do that, we should do that. Yeah, and there's still a part of me that was like, I think I can figure it out, but
I think it's a bit of a rich person's business.
It is.
Where it's like a toy that like, you can own a restaurant if you're already rich and then you own a restaurant and then you can like invite friends, host dinners, and all the pressure's off about making money. And it's more just like to enjoy it or show off or like have it. And because then it's a unique experience, right? If you're like, hey, I own this restaurant, come by. The chef will make us like the best thing. We have the best table in the house, whatever time you want, whatever day you want. That's like a very unique experience and access. And I think it comes down, that's the thing.
That reminds me, actually, I had a guy that I met at an event, and his company was doing over $150 million a year, and he had a private jet. He had a couple of interesting stories, but he's like, the best part of, he's got this like Southern accent. He's like, the best part about owning a private jet is getting clients on it and getting employees on it. He's like, economically, it doesn't make sense, and like it'd make more sense to just charter private flights, but if I get a client on him and he'll be like, oh, like, you like to play golf? Let's play a round of golf in like, some place like in the middle of America or whatever. And so like they'll pick up the client, private jet, play golf, and then they'll sign some $100,000 contract. Or if you're like some top salesperson, then you're like, yeah, take the jet for a flight. And so those little deal sweeteners keep the retention of clients and employees. And that's why it's valuable. So it's similar with a restaurant. If you're that rich person, if you get your client, you get the chef to make them something like personalized, you get the best table, you bring whoever you want, then the losses could maybe cover some of the upside of owning a restaurant.
I think it's interesting too, like a lot of businesses that are like bad businesses, people continue to do at a high rate, right? Food, restaurants. And it's like, why, right? And I think why is because people are just pretty like mimetic. Like they want to do the businesses that they see the most, right? So like as a consumer, as a person, the average person like what business is in your face all the time? You eat 3 times a day, you know, like you eat at restaurants all the time. So you see restaurants everywhere. So it's like when you're trying to like, oh, I want to start a business, like what can I do? What's the first thing that comes to mind? It's going to be what you do and what you do as a consumer. So it's going to be like restaurants, fashion brands, you know, and these are kind of two of the worst things on paper, right? Doesn't mean it can't work, but it's just like, it's rare for someone to be like a first time entrepreneur or someone who's not, or even an entrepreneur to be like, you know, I want to do like a back end platform for like connecting gardeners and, you know, their potential customers. Like, why would you ever think of that? You know, it's not glamorous. It's not in your face. I think that's kind of why, you know, and then there's also like a lot of like, I feel like a lot of restaurant has a lot of like money laundering and stuff, depending on where you are in the world. But I feel like those things, you have people funding restaurants that need a clean cash, and then it perpetuates, like there's more restaurants that open because that's the best way to clean the cash, and then people see more restaurants being open and then they open more. So it's like this perpetual thing of like, they just continue to open and close. And you know, there's a couple spots like where I grew up, I remember seeing like from the time that I was a kid to when I was like 20 or whatever, there was like 15 different places in this one, you know, like you see that.
Yeah, you always say that.
And they just don't last. And it's like, you know, any other really bad businesses?
Well, I think one thing that I think people miss is, well, I think like one is like, if it's your first business and you're trying to like get some level of financial freedom, but you're shooting for something like massive and you end up like working incredibly hard to try to build this $1 billion company, but you miss the idea of just building a cash flowing business. I think that that's sometimes something that people like overly strain. So it's not necessarily like a bad business, but it's just a common pitfall that I see. I think like food products and beverages, like you said,
Beverages. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm a massive beverage consumer. Like, if you go to my house, I've got 30 different drinks on offer. So I'm biggest consumer. I love it. I wish I had my own beverage company. But then whenever someone tells me they have that beverage company, I always worry for them, just because the few people that I know in that industry have done really poorly. I think like, it seems like you're either dominant or you die. And the people that die end up losing a lot of money. It seems like for whatever reason, people fund a lot of these beverage companies and they lose a lot of money. They pay for placements. Sometimes you need a refrigerated section in supermarkets, which apparently is really hard to get. And you pay fees to get it in the supermarket. And the margins are so thin. And yeah, I find it like it's a small category of people that are actually doing well.
Yeah.
And so...
huge startup costs. Like even if you're not doing retail, like a wholesale beverage company, so there you have the scale because you don't have X amount of seats in your restaurant. It's kind of less capped, but yeah, really expensive to like listing fees in grocery stores is a huge thing. I remember discussing that a lot with cookies and different cookie products. We're looking at doing like a frozen bag of dough one year. And like, so you're like buying space, essentially. You're buying real estate in the grocery store. Like in their freezer section, they might have, you know, 84 products in that section, and you're buying one of those slots. I think it was like in the freezer section of one of the grocery stores I talked to, it was like $50,000 a SKU just to get listed. So if you have like 4 flavors, that's like $200,000. You know, it's crazy. It's a lot of startup costs.
Yeah.
So, okay, we talk about leverage a lot. You're like obsessed with leverage. That's kind of my word of the year that I'm like, always, is this like, am I optimizing for leverage right now? So I'm trying to get better at it. You're a master of it. You have 150 employees. That's a lot of leverage. How do people get started in thinking about and using leverage? If you're just like a first time entrepreneur or even like solo entrepreneur who, you know, builds something up, how do you like think in that way more and more?
So I think there's a lot of things that have leverage. So you've got social capital, you've got knowledge, you've got money, you've got like employees, you've got status, you've got like an email list or like an audience or whatever it is. So there's a lot of assets that you can generate that are more creative than just money or just employees or whatever it is. And once you have that, then there's a lot of ways that that can be beneficial. So, let's say you have experience running a cookie company, and then for someone that's starting a food brand, that's leverage because you've already made mistakes, you've already got deals, you've already got connections. And so you can get equity, you can get, consulting fees, and you can get a high hourly rate because you have that time. And then once you've got a success story, then you have the leverage of that case study, and then you can start to charge 5x. So there's, we're building an audience right now. And part of the reason I'm building an audience is I love to incubate companies, but there's a cost to find operators that are really good. And so if I'm putting out content that's entrepreneurial, I've got some amazing entrepreneurs in my community. And then I say, hey, I need an operator for this. I have leverage now. So that way, if I'm raising money for the company, then they might put more money into my company for someone else because I can attract better talent and they'll stay for me longer and they know about the mission of why I'm building it. So I think that everything that you're doing, if you're thinking about how it can add value for other things in the future, then it's going to be sometimes like taking a little step back to go 2 steps forward is the way to be thinking about things in long term as well.
So like taking the time to like, for example, hiring, we talk about it a lot, but like not, like something that you could do yourself, making the point to like, no, I'm going to hire someone just to do this. And that way it's like more time up front, but now you have somebody continuously doing something.
Yeah, exactly. And like, that's the base case scenario is like people talk about if my time is worth $100 an hour and, I can hire a cleaner for $30 an hour, then if I don't like cleaning, then I can make more money by spending more time working, doing the thing that I like and outsource that thing that I don't like.
Yeah.
But then, I just think there's just layers and layers to it as well. Another thing is if we're hiring an editor, if we do 5 interviews and they last for X period of time, but if we do 15 interviews, instead of lasting for 6 months, they last for 6 years because we've really gone deep and found someone amazing, then theoretically the time that we spent in that state can go further. And then also the time that we're spending on the content is going to like be more exponential. So,
so how do you make the call whether to do something yourself or to hire someone? Because that's the thing I have trouble with, where it's like sometimes you could be like, well, I could just do this and get it over with. And then you go, okay, no, you don't want to hire someone. And then you end up spending like hours and hours trying to find the right person and you don't, and it doesn't work out. And it's like, I could have just done this myself in the first place. What's the balance?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a clear formula. Things that are like repeating tasks that are low value are typically things that you want to try to get rid of. So, I've been trying to find a meal prepper. I tried to find a meal prepper to like make my food, found one, didn't work out, found another, didn't work out. And then I thought I'm going to hire an executive assistant and that person's going to find the meal prep person, because that way, if they fail, then they'll just find the next person. I just teach them how to do it.
So finding the meal prepper became a repeating task.
Exactly.
So now you hired someone else.
Yeah. And like the whole time I could have been cooking, and would I have been saving time if I just would have been cooking the whole time? Yes. But a few things. One is I just wouldn't have cooked because I'm just whatever, for whatever reason. And then
we'll psychoanalyze you another time.
Yeah, exactly. But then the other thing is that's an investment in my health and my energy and everything long term. I've got a meal waiting for me at home, so that's going to save me time tonight. That gives me more mind space, whatever it is. So I don't know if there's like a golden rule on like when to hire, but I think early stage entrepreneurs or people that haven't hired probably gravitate to under hiring. And I remember before I hired my first employee, a few things. Like one was like a mentor said, I was saying like, what is the risk that if they, steal something or whatever? And they said, well, what is the risk if you don't hire? Like, where will you actually be? And that was an interesting like shift in frame. Another person I was just like, should I hire? And he's just like, Max, like hire, like,
Yeah.
And, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. Like people often have a probation period, just say, hey, sorry, it didn't work out. I don't have the revenue for you, or it's not working out with you. And that's the other thing as well. I think like, these people that we hire, if you can cut them after a month, if they're not a superstar, that's another thing where people say hire slow, fire fast. So you can always take the time, find them. If it's not good, get rid of them, find someone amazing. But good people are worth, 3 to 10x what you pay them.
And it's a good deal for both.
It's a good deal for both. You know, ideally they're part of something amazing. They get like amazing learning experience. They get to have something that they really enjoy, whatever it is. And so for them, you're giving them a better opportunity that they could get anywhere else. And ideally, they're the right personality, or you've given the right training blocks or the right opportunity where they can create 3 to 10x of the value for you. And in those scenarios, like, it's amazing. And then you just can't hire enough, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's another thing. Like, there's some people that you could just, like, you know, I'm like, I don't know if like you back in the day, but like, if you've just got that energy and you just really want to work, you just want to show that you're amazing, then like that person, you can just hire them for almost anything and they're going to like get you an ROI.
Yeah. Yeah. That, similar to what you said, one thing I've changed my mind on since I'm younger, like I used to think like, well, I can't afford to hire this person. And now I'm like, I can't afford not to, you know, like if I'm not hiring them, I'm doing it myself and I'm moving way too slow and I won't achieve my goals and I won't make enough money that it makes sense. And like, when you start thinking like that, instead of a scarcity mindset, you're thinking with like, oh, like, you know, I need to hire someone to achieve what I want. That's a big shift in mindset that took me a long time. I'm still figuring out, but and similar with things like cooking. Like I hate cooking. Like I've never turned my oven on, period. Like, and a lot of people are like, that's such a waste of money. Like, you know, that doesn't make any sense. How could you not cook? You go to restaurants every day, whatever. But it's like, to me, it's the opposite. It's like, you know, let someone else do what they're good at, which is cooking. And I can save my energy and my time to do things that I'm good at and make a lot more money than I'm spending at the restaurant, you know? And people don't look at things that way. They'll just be like, well, no, I'm not going to go like eat at a restaurant for like $100. I'm going to like cook and save the 100. But like, yeah, what about your 3 hours? Like, okay, I mean, that's fine if you want to, you know, pay yourself $30 an hour, but like maybe you're worth more than that. You got to just like think about that, right?
100%. Yeah. Like one thing that I think people massively underestimate is the cost of thinking about things. Or so like I've banned YouTube and video games and all these things from my life unless I'm in the company of a friend. And the good thing is when I'm home alone, I don't think, should I watch a YouTube video or shouldn't I? I don't like have like the flow on effect of like that dopamine like addiction reaction. But similar with cooking, it's like I don't have to think. Like even going on DoorDash, I'm like, what do I feel like? And scrolling, I would spend like 15-20 minutes to find what I want. If I've just like found like the nutrition is prepared, what's optimal for me, and it's just sitting there in the fridge and it's going to go off if I don't eat it, then I don't think. I just open the fridge and eat. And that's 15 minutes every single time. But a lot of those things kind of have these like flow on effects where you have like this limited window of like brain thinking capacity and you're spending it on things that kind of are irrelevant. And you could have spent it on something that could have been like the game changer thing for you for that day.
Yeah.
And so you get through everything that you've done and now you've got this few hour brain capacity and now you're like, cool, I'm going to put up this job ad and find this amazing person, or I'm going to outreach to like this incredible mentor, or I'm going to like write a few new scripts for this, you know, content that I'm producing. Yeah. And that brain power is really important. So you want to protect it. Yeah. And so what you can automate, what you can optimize, what you can leverage can create like capacity to just create more in the world.
Yeah. No, some people are like, well, I like cooking. That's cool. But just like know why you're doing it. Like if you love cooking and that's your time to like, you know, meditate, reflect on your day, relax, like great, you know, like there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, don't say you're doing it because like of the cost or, you know, or maybe it is because of the cost, but then like that, you know, I think you just know why you're doing things.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. I've got like a best friend or a very close friend who still does the grocery shopping. And like, I joke, I'm like, I didn't know this still existed, these grocery stores. But like, it's been so long since I've done the grocery shopping. And I hate grocery stores. I hate it. Like, I don't mind going.
It's like you go and like, I could spend 2 hours like mouth open, just like lost in there, like looking at the 500 cereals. And like, it's like, I just don't want to even be in there.
Totally.
Know?
And like, if you're just going to browse and you're like, hey, let's like, you know, let's find like a dessert for tonight. Okay, that can be fun. It's kind of like, it's more of like the novelty element.
Activity.
If I'm doing my shopping there and I'm like, I need to get like, you know, 3 bananas and like this and that, like, and I have to like, oh, what did I miss? Like, you know, it's for me, it's something that I really don't enjoy. And it's like $6 now or something like that to get someone to do that for you. It's like instant delivery. It's like an incredible like time saving. It's in terms of like time saving, like that's $6 for like an hour. Like it's one of the cheapest, like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
cleaning, it's like $30 an hour. Instacart, it's like $6 or $7 for that hour. It's so cheap relative to the value that you get. So, and it's easy. And like, I also think like by doing that, you're less likely to get food spoilage and things like that because you can optimize to exactly what you've got in the fridge in the moment. So, I mean, there's some that just people still don't want to do. Like,
yeah, I love Instacart. Like,
Yeah.
it's great. It's just
Yeah.
taking out an activity that I hated and like, yeah, I think another interesting thing is like people talk about acquiring skills and like knowing how to do every part of a business or having the skills to kind of like be able to do a lot of different things. I think in some ways skills hold you back. So like I think back for myself and I'm like, when I started Yodo, my first kind of thing, because I'm kind of like a creative thinker, I'm like, well, I need a brand, I need a logo. That's always my first thing, whether or not that's right. That's whenever I start a new business or a new idea, I'm like envisioning the branding. I did the same thing with Money Talks. Like the first thing was like, oh, I know it's going to be the grill. It's going to be that. But so my first thing is always the branding. And when I started, when I was like 20 or whatever, and I was like, I need to create this brand. So I downloaded Photoshop and Illustrator. I like read all about how to use it. Like, oh, how do I round this edge? How do I bring in this font? And like, I probably spent like a month, figuring out Photoshop, Illustrator, learning graphic design, designing the logo. Super proud of the logo. It was great. It stayed for many years. And then I took that graphic design skill and like I would help friends out and I would just be doing logos for people. And every new project I would start, within the cookie company. So every packaging, all the merch, every other business I did, I do the logo. And like, if I look back, I'm like, that actually held me back a lot because it was like, that was my value add in my head. But really like I could have just hired a graphic designer and been the entrepreneur, been the business person and not spend my time doing that. Right. And it's like kind of some of the most successful people I know don't have any technical skills. And they're just like, hiring the best people and outsourcing everything. And they're forced to because they literally can't do it.
Yeah, I kind of like half agree with you. I think that learning the skill is really valuable actually, because when you're hiring the person to replace yourself, then you actually understand what is true skill. And then you can come in and like edit as needed. So like when I was starting
That's
Megaphone, I learned to code my own website and I didn't even know what WordPress was. So I coded on HTML, CSS. And then if I wanted to add a blog post, I would like add it into the homepage. Then I'd go to the page, add in the blog post. So I'd like move everything down. I would add it into the sidebar,
Wow.
like, cause I didn't even have a content management system. I had no idea what I was doing. And then eventually I hire a coder and, I've never coded in like, since like the first year of running the business, maybe like first 18 months, I did like some of the code. But I have at least enough skills to read code and go like, hey, that doesn't make sense. Or like come in and just tweak one thing or understand the structure. Same with design. Like I did the first design for the first couple of years and now like I'm terrible at design relative to our designers. But at least if I need to quickly tweak something last minute. So I think it's like, and if you look at like people like, Elon being like the engineer behind a lot of the products and things like that, like Mark Zuckerberg being a coder and actually like writing the first thing. I think having the skills to like get the thing off the ground is really good. But then the key thing is just knowing when you need to move on. And the trap is once you have those skills, it's always quicker for you to do it than hire someone. And you have to think about the long term because even though it's quicker to get, okay, whatever, I'll just cook dinner this time. Like I'm not going to like search for a chef, but you have to think about it in like a year's length of time, and it's like, yes, it's going to be more annoying in the short term and more work. And a lot of the time in leverage or in getting things like scaled up, you go one step backwards to go two steps forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to say the next thing I was going to say was what is the balance of getting your hands dirty and like outsourcing? And I think you said it perfectly. It's like the fact that I know graphic design is good. But I have to recognize that I'm not going to do that and hire designers. And then I just have a better eye than if I never knew it at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's hard because once like I've done that, I've hired designers and I'm always like, it's not really right. And I just I'm going to do it myself and I just fix it. And I'm like, no, I just got to do it,
Yeah. Yeah. It is hard. It is hard.
I guess it depends too. Like, are you designing a brand identity for a company that you're going to have for the next 20 years? Or are you like becoming a designer and literally like that's your, you got to do it every week and pump something out? Like that's the difference too, like building the machine versus like being the machine,
Yeah.
like polishing a machine so that it runs well is a good use of your time. But like being the machine that's actually built, that's actually doing something every day is not the best use of your time to build a business.
Totally.
Okay, so another thing I've been thinking about, inertia of like you were saying earlier, like you start one of these kind of like quick cash businesses, that's not something you want to do long term, right? What do you think on staying in things that and that you're like built up versus like pivoting, moving on, being like, okay, it's time to leave that. It's time to kind of like take a step back, restart something in a lane that I think has more potential.
Yeah. I think like with entrepreneurship, there's kind of people fall into roughly three main categories. One is just to try to get like financial freedom or to like support their lifestyle. Maybe they're digital nomads, or maybe they're trying to like retire off their money to some degree. The second reason is to get to some level of luxury status or like some big home run, and they want to kind of like be a baller. And the last one is like mission driven or passion driven. And so I think it depends where you're at. So if you're building a business and you've achieved, let's say, financial freedom or whatever it is, then you need to consider if it's still serving the things that are like deeply rooted into yourself, because ultimately compounding is like the most valuable thing in terms of like building massive wealth. And so if I had just focused on Megaphone and like only did that for the next 10 years, that would have been definitely the most lucrative thing for me in the next 5 to 10 years, because it already was moving really well. We could have acquired companies, we could expand it into new regions. Like I believe we could build that into, 9-figure company. But then you also need to think about like sustained motivation. So I think like the big thing is, these side hustles and all these hacks and things like that to get you going. Once you're going, then you need to figure out like what is the vehicle potentially, if you really want to build something big and impactful, that you could have sustained motivation for a really long time, and it has to align to like your purpose and your why and your values and everything like that. The sooner that you can find that and let it compound, the better.
What's an example of like missions or a mission that could drive you? Because I get super distracted. I mean, every day we're talking about, I'm like, have a new idea of something I feel like doing, whatever.
Yeah.
And you could really be distracted for a long time. Like you could never not be distracted if you don't focus. So what is like an example of a mission that someone could have that like could keep you focused?
So my mission is to incubate mission-driven companies.
That's very meta.
Yeah, exactly. And leveraging the personal brand as a way to like build a community of people that want to do that with me. And why that is inspiring to me is I want to do mission-driven work, whether that's like working for like important missions for the world or whatever it is. I've got my things that I find important. I love incubation. I like philosophy. So it like ticks a few boxes of the things that I like to do in life. It takes kind of my skill set. It's something that I could see myself doing for 10 years. As long as like I don't get burnt out on like the content production side, but I love the business incubation side. And then I'm using someone like Andrew Wilkinson as like a playbook of, or, Y Combinator as like an extreme example of what that might look like to some degree. So that's me trying to find a mission that kind of is something that I could still see myself doing in 10 years and still being like really fun.
Is it to keep yourself going, or is it because you want to have a certain impact on the world around you?
It's to keep me motivated. So I think a few things. Like one is like the clearer your mission, then the more enjoyable the work is going to be. Because like, another example, which isn't mission driven, like I don't want to say this in camera, but I'll say it, is
we're about to get hottest clip of the year. Let's go.
We're getting inside scoop. So I started my e-commerce company, Sylvie, and I love the products. Like it's a silk pillowcase infused with silver. It's antibacterial. It's really good for your skin.
I didn't know we had ad reads here.
Yeah. Genuinely the best pillowcase on the market. I genuinely believe that. And I'm kidding. Use code Money Talks. It's a killer product. I love fabrics. I love optimizing products. It is a product that I love, But like, do I think it's really important that this pillowcase exists in the world or these bed sheets exist in the world? And the answer is no. And like, yes, I had acne growing up. Yes, it's something that I think will like help solve problems and be useful, but it's not something that I'm like inspired by. Like, I built the company because it was opportunistic. I knew e-commerce. I knew how to do product market fit. I knew how to do all these boxes. I had a business partner that was really good with it, and it grew. We launched it. It started growing like 20% every month. It was going massive. It was really fun while I was growing. And then we had like issues with like COVID and like logistic image issues, and like we got like cease and desist, and like random issues started to come up. And then all of the motivation got stripped away really quickly because it didn't like, unless it was like short term, like unless it was like really lucrative and like opportunistic and like status seeking and like, you know, things like that, then like it got stripped away from me. And it was a learning lesson where I could bounce between opportunities, and it could be fun, it could be engaging for a period of time, but eventually every business gets hard. And if you really care about what you're doing, then you'll stick with it. But if you don't, then you will just want to bounce to the next one. That business is still going, still wanted to succeed, love it. But now what I'm trying to find something is like, is this something that I could see myself doing for 10 years? Is this something that I could do even if it was really hard and like things didn't go my way? Is this something that, you know, serves a purpose bigger than just like make max money?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think too, like, I don't have a problem with like opportunistic things. They just fill a certain role, you know? Like, I don't think I mean, rental business, this, that, like, I think most people would hear that and be like, well, you know, easy for you to say type thing. And, yeah, I think there's both are right? It's like you use the opportunistic things to kind of get yourself to a level where now you can look at yourself and be like, what do I really care about? You know?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where it's like that first level of business I was saying is like, you know, your first mission is to like opportunistic or like make enough money so that you have breathing room, or make enough money so you have your rent and your food taken care of, whatever it is. And that is a mission, you know, and I think that is a worthy mission, but that mission eventually gets ticked off, and then you can't eat more than you need or like rent more than you need. And then you start moving into status and luxury and like, and if that's what you're drawn to, like, awesome, go for it. But even that like has diminishing returns. There's only so much money that you can spend on like lifestyle, and eventually that will have a diminishing return. So I think if you really want to have something that you're going to do for a really long time, once you start to tick the boxes of number 1 and number 2, you have to find number 3. And the sooner that you can find number 3, then the longer that you can let it compound, because compounding is the best force, right? So if you just said to me like, hey, Max, I'm going to do this Money Talks podcast for the next 50 years, and there's nothing that will stop me, and this is what I'm doing, this is my passion, this is my calling, then it's going to be like fucking massive. You know, it will be. Like, it just will be.
Yeah.
And if it's all you're thinking about. And if you find ideas that allow you to be like that in that sustained state, then it's definitely going to be massive.
So that's the most powerful thing, is that you just keep doing it. So it doesn't matter what it is, but it matters because that'll make you keep doing it. And that's the most powerful thing.
Exactly. And so like the clearer your mission is, and so, you know, I think that's the thing with like inertia as well, where it's like, if it's opportunistic and if it's like to try to make like enough money and then things go hard and you're trying to figure out, should I double down or not? Like, it becomes challenging to figure out, should you or not? Like, because you're weighing up the financial opportunity, you're weighing up the risk. It is actually pretty hard to figure out. And, you know, each scenario has to be looked at individually and figuring out like the pros and cons, and you have to make a weighted decision. But if it's like, hey, this is my calling in life, and this is important for the world, and I'm doing this, and I'm going to like force my will into make this happen. I'm going to like build the community. I'm going to build the network. I'm going to build the knowledge, just make this happen. Then it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I like that. I think another good question, we might have said it on another podcast, but like, what would you do basically? Like, think about what would you do if you had $1 billion in the bank, you know? Like, so money is like not even an issue at all. And then like, what would you spend your time doing? And it's like, I don't know. I find that sometimes I think about that, because it's like money really does at all levels, like kind of weigh you down to where you're always considering it. You're always trying to be realistic, responsible. But that could be a good way for people to figure out, like, you know, what are the activities that just like, if you were already like, you know, good to go on the money front, like you look at your account, $100 million, $1 billion, 10 billion, whatever that number is. And it's just like, what would you do all day? You know?
Totally.
I don't know what the answer, like, I don't know. Like, you know, it's hard, but I think that's the root, right? Do you know what you do?
I mean, ideally, I'd be doing something similar, just like way supercharged, way supercharged.
You're like, I do have $1 billion in the bank. Like,
Yeah, almost. No, I'm kidding. But on that, I think what's cool about Mr. Beast and Elon Musk is like they theoretically, I don't know if this is true, but at least Mr. Beast, he says like he lives in like this room no bigger than this. He's got like his fridge and his TV and his bed and like some weights, so maybe a little bit bigger than this. He lives in this,
you're really blowing up my spot here. Exposing my studio.
Yeah. But he lives in just like this one room studio, and he's like, he sold his cars, he sold all his like fashion stuff.
Yeah.
Like he lives a sick life, like because he gets invited to all these events or whatever. It's not a normal life. But the point is, if you don't get attached to the material things as well, then you can also be mission driven. But if your like baseline lifestyle income or lifestyle is like $10 million a year or $5 million a year, then like you always have to make sure that that money is coming in, or that's always like a thing going on in the background. But the lower you can get your like yearly burn, then the more you can just not have to think about the money.
Mr. Beast is so unique because how old is he? 23, 25?
24.
Okay. 24. And he's already like, I've seen interviews too, where he's just like, yeah, I don't care about anything except for like doing the business, which is his YouTube channel, and like making the best videos and making the next one bigger and better than the last. And like, that's the most compounding. And he's just like, yeah, he's already like over, or he never even cared about the cars and the clothes and the vacations and whatever. And he's just like his singular focus on that. And like, it's pretty crazy to think like he's 24. When he's 74,
exactly.
What he will have done.
Exactly.
He's already the biggest YouTuber ever. And he like.
So here's a few things. Apparently he just reached 660 million people in the last 30 days. I think that's right, which is 10% of the population like watched his content in like the last 30 days. So like ridiculously influential in society. And the reason that he got there is not because, you know, he was trying to make money, because like he was drawn to, I don't know, like he wasn't like taking the money out and like, you know, buying all these flashy things or whatever. He was like mission driven, and his mission was just to make the best content possible. And he believed in YouTube. And so the reason why he's so interesting is there's mission driven entrepreneurs. Like there's all of these like tech entrepreneurs that are building like, you know, whatever it is, like the next important tech company that could solve problem X. And he just happened to be a mission-driven entrepreneur that thinks like a tech entrepreneur that happened to choose YouTube as his medium. And so there's other people like him, but there's no one that brought that philosophy into YouTube. And it turned out to be a really impactful, massive thing. And he's just compounding like crazy. He's still trying to innovate. Yeah. He's reinvesting like crazy. And yeah, the future is still infinite for someone like that.
And also, talk about leverage. YouTube is like media in general, but like that's real leverage because like he's reaching 10% of the world. That's insane. It's like, well, I mean, he could be president if he wants. Like just by the amount of people who know him and like him. Like
he talks about doing this for like another 20 years and then donating all of his money and running for president. And like,
he's talking about that.
That's what his terms would be. He's like, vote for me for president, and then I'll donate all of my money, and then I'll do everything that I can for the good of the planet. And yeah, very I mean, cool. Again, like he can be incredibly influential with like his philanthropy videos and things like that. And again, like the fact that he's mission driven is also part of the reason why he's connecting to more people as well, because there are people, you know, let's say like Logan Paul, and I don't have an opinion on him per se, but you know, he theoretically has ripped off people with his NFT project, Crypto Zoo. He has, you know, he's like pushing like, let's say a lot of products, and he seems to be like financially driven, whether or not that's true or not. But he doesn't seem to have like a project where it's like, here's how I'm helping society. Here's how I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And he's a really good content creator, and he's really financially driven. But Mr. Beast is a really good content creator that's really mission driven as well. And the difference compounds more significantly And the reputation of people like that will get seen as well. Like there's only so much that you connect with people that are fighting for just additional income, even if they're incredibly talented. And so that's another thing to Mr. Beast's advantage as well, where he is genuinely trying to do amazing things for the world. And we want to support people like that.
And he spends no time or money on trying to convince people of who he is, right? He just is. Like, he just makes the videos, makes them better. Like, he's not doing this whole like side thing where he's like with all the flashy stuff and trying to like show how rich he is. Like, he literally just says, I don't care, and I'm making videos, right?
Yeah.
And that's like an extreme version, because I feel like you have to be so like elevated with your like ego separation to do that, which like is just, we're all human. That's hard. But that's a good example of just like not spending any energy on trying to like convince other people like, hey, look, I'm doing this and I'm building this business. Just build the thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's cool. Any final thoughts tonight?
On anything in general?
Yeah. Anything. You seen any like, because the Super Bowl just happened, Super Bowl commercials, like you seen any really good marketing lately? Like, I'm always thinking about, like, I love marketing, so I'm always like, what's the next big marketing thing? And Super Bowl commercials are great because they're so bold and they're so like, it's a cultural thing in itself, and it's like, everyone knows they're like $7 million for 30 seconds. I think it's like, I don't know if it's worth it, but it's really cool. And it's like, it's just so iconic, you know? So I like love watching those. I haven't watched all of them from this year yet, but there's always something unique because people just spend so much money because it's so expensive to get on TV in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, like, because I ban so much media, I see so few ads.
Interesting.
So, like, I'm trying to even think of, like, an ad that I've seen. Like, the only thing that I hear is, like, podcast reads. Like, I hear, like, HubSpot ads by Sampa. And I quickly click next.
That's funny. What's the best or your favorite marketing campaign that you've ever done or worked on, either for Sylvie or for a client or something?
I mean, with Sylvie, we had a TikTok that got 21 million views or something like that, and it was like the first video on an account. Like, we actually accidentally posted it on this account because like our like media buyer would like edit them on an account and then bring it on our main channel, and he just accidentally posted it. It got like, yeah, I think like over 20 million views like pretty quickly, like probably even more than 20. And it generated like $100,000 in sales within like a few days, and people were like doing commenting videos, like responding to the video, like they were like trying to like disprove the ad or like so that was like an example of just like a crazy viral ad that just like brought in income really quickly.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I love that anybody can now go viral at any time. It makes like the game of social media and marketing a bit like a roulette, like a, you know, like a like it's like anyone can win at any time. So you just have to keep making content, like that kind of example.
Totally.
Like, blow up a company out of nowhere.
Totally. Yeah.
Super cool.
Actually, I'll give an example of a brand that I think is really cool that's doing marketing in a clever way. Is I think they're called Mini Katana, and I met this guy at an event, and what I think is really interesting about him is he basically doesn't run ads, although he might run like a small amount of ads, but basically puts his entire marketing budget into creating like shorts for these swords that he sells. And he's like 8-figure company. And what's so cool about it is, you know, for Sylvie, we're spending all of our money on like Facebook ads and TikTok ads and whatever it is. And we're trying to like get an ROI from the money straight away, and we can make it work. But if we took that same budget and got that same ROI on organic content, then it would compound over time. And like the cost to acquire a customer would go down over time. And like the asset and the defensibility of the company keeps getting more significant. And the cool thing for him is he even gets paid for running ads now, because he's like running these shorts and YouTube videos. He's actually getting revenue from all the views that he's generating. I think he's generating like tens of millions of views.
The marketing, instead of a marketing expense, it's a new revenue stream.
Exactly.
Genius.
And so if you can find a product that lends itself for organic marketing, and you're good enough to like take advantage of organic marketing, then I think that opportunity is massive. Like, I think that, you know, I don't know what are the examples, but like find like a viral content thread, you know, of like, people are going viral doing like video X, and then build a product and company around that and just be like the dominant player. And then you can spend so much money on content production that individuals can't because you've got this business model built around it. I think that is like genius and like long-term proof. And like, yeah, I think it's
I love
awesome.
that play. It's like everybody's their own media company.
Yeah,
And just focus, like double down on that.
exactly.
Love that. Dope. All right. Should we
Cool.
call it?
Let's go.
Money Talks. All
Money
right.
talks.
That's the
Let's
pod.
go.